Hey guys, I am Nishant and I am a full stack engineer since 2020. Over the years, I have worked on things like React, Angular, Next.js, Node.js, and many other things. I am also a course creator and a blog writer on FreeCodeCamp. So, I am the perfect person to teach you about concepts in React. In this video, we will learn about the useState and useEffect hook in React. We will see what they are exactly, why do we use them, and what we should avoid while using them. The prerequisites are JavaScript closures and variables. If you know them, that's fine, but if you don't, that's also fine because we will learn anyway. So, without wasting any time, let's jump right into it. We will learn about these two, then we will jump into the states because they will be needed, their concepts. So, let me erase this. First, we will see what are variables in JavaScript. So, variables are simply containers which contain some values and it can change over time. For example, let's say that I am making a variable called name. So, this here is a variable called name and assign the value of Nishant in this variable. This is the value. This is the name, or I can say variable name, and this is called the variable value. So, this is the name of variable, this is the value of the variable. We can also reassign it. So, if I can change this to, let's say, Uday, or even something like Borat, this is called variable redeclaration. So, I can name this as, this both as variable redeclaration. So, this is the variable creation phase, this is the variable declaration phase where we are declaring some value for the variable, and this is the redeclaration phase where we are redeclaring the value of the variable. So, creation means creating it, declaration means assigning it some value, and redeclaration means reassigning it some value like Uday or Borat. So, variables are of different types. For example, this variable is of type string because it is having alphabetical characters here. We can also make a variable, let's say age. In here we can store some numeric value like 27. Again, this is a variable creation and this is declaration, similar to the first case. First case, second case. We are defining it, declaring it, defining it, declaring it. Similarly, we can have a boolean as well. Let's say let married. This can be, let's say, true or false because it's a boolean. So, we have different type of variables like string, integer, odd number, boolean, arrays, objects, hash maps, whatnot. This is called a variable. So, this is done. You now understand what are variables. Now, the next thing that we will learn is closures. So, let me write it here. Closures. This has to do with the privacy of a variable. For example, let's say that we are having a function and inside we are having a variable declaration called, let's say, name. The name is called as Nishant. We are declaring the variable with this value of Nishant. So, if I try to access this or do a console.log of this name outside the function, this will not work. This will be an error. This is called privacy of variables because this variable name, this is private for this function. It means it can only be used inside the function, not outside it. But say if we had a variable here called do something, any variable outside the function or in the global scope, let's say we make it as do something. So we are having a variable in the global scope called do something and its value is same, do something. So we can access this inside the function. If I do a console log of this do something in the function, this will work. This will print this value here. But this will not work. This will throw an error because of closures. What this means is we can use a variable which is in the global scope or outside the function scope, like this variable, in a function, but we cannot do the same with a variable which is in a function like this name outside the function. This is to maintain the privacy. Let me write it here. Privacy of variables. Okay. Let me write it in bold or in, I can say, attractive handwriting. PRIVAC. Privacy of variables, because we cannot use this variable, this variable outside the function. So it means this is private to this function only. This was JavaScript closures. So these two topics are done, and now we can move into states in React. So what is a state? So state is simply a variable which can change over time. So their properties are almost similar, but there is a difference. Let's say that in our real life we have something called weather. So weather means seasons. So we have different types of weathers like summer, then we have winter, then we have rainy, then we have, let's say, what else we have? Okay, we don't have snow in India, but okay, we have it in hill stations like I can say Gangtok or somewhere like that. So we have weathers like summer, winter, rainy, snowy. Similarly, we have states in React. So know that these can change over time. Similarly, we have states that can change over time. So now that we have understood what is a state in React and why do we need to use a state, let's understand how to create a state. We need to use something called a useState hook from React library. So useState is a hook that is basically a function. So how to create it? Simply import it from React and then invoke it. So as I said, it is a function. So I can do use state and invoke it. And in here we can pass any value that we want to pass initially. So this can be initial value. It can be empty or with some value. But if I pass this as empty, what will happen is when I render this in the component, this will be empty. The state will be empty. But if I pass some value here, let's say we make one state here and pass some value of Nishant here, and it prints in the UI, we will see Nishant on the first render or on the first load of the component in the UI. But you might be thinking this and this are same, how to make a difference between them or how to differentiate between them. So this returns two things to us, and they are the name of the state and one function to set it. So say name we are having and to set it we have a function called setName. So I will jump into code and show you these things in some time. So this is a state name and this is a function to set it, and this is how we differentiate between this. So let's say we create a state here called const something and set something. So this will be equal to this use state, because this use state is returning us an array and it contains two things called sum, the state name, and set something, the setter function to set this state. Fine. Similarly, in this use state we are passing initial value called Nishant, which can be empty as seen in the first case, and this is returning us a name and a function to set the name called setName function. This is the value and this is the function. Fine. So this was how to create a state in React. Now let's jump into code and see some additional information about states in React. So we need to import the useState hook from React and then define this useState function like this, invoke it like this. So we don't have any option to use it or change it. So what we need is to get some values from here in the array. So we can make this as a name, the state name, and to set it we have setName. We can also pass initial values, but let me show you what will happen if I don't pass any values initially. So I can print it like this using the state name called name in curly braces in the UI like this. So save it and we will see nothing because it does not have any initial values. But if I pass value like Nishant initially in this useState function, we will see Nishant on the screen like this here, as you can see. Let's change it. Let's say we have a function called change name and we need a button to trigger the function. So I can say change name. We need to run the function when we click the button, so we can use an on click event here like this. We can just use setName function to set the new name. Set this to, let's say, Borat. Now if I click button of change name, this will change to Borat from Nishant. This is why we use states. Let me demonstrate using a simple variable what will happen. So let me comment this and this for now. Let name equals to Nishant. We can redeclare it in the function change name to something called Borat like this. Also throw a console log of name in the function. Now if I do this change here, let's see what happens. Click change name. The name is changing from Nishant to Borat in the variable of name, but it is not reflecting in the UI because React is a reactive library and React UI, when it re-renders, it is not catching up to this change, or it is not responding to this change here, to this variable change of Nishant to Borat. That is why we need states. Let me repeat again what I said previously. When we are redeclaring the name from Nishant to Borat, it is changing, but it is not reflecting in the UI. The UI is not getting updated according to this change of name from Nishant to Borat, because React is reactive. It will not update when this variable updates. We need to have state for that. So when a state changes, our component will update, but a simple variable changes when our component will not update. That is why we use states instead of variables if it changes. Let me now show you one more thing here. If I do a console log of name in the same function of change name. So what will happen is this function will run and it will change the name. Simple. Click change name. In the console, we still see Nishant, but on the UI, we see Borat. The name has been changed, but not reflecting in the console. Why is that? So this is because this setName function that we're having is asynchronous. Meaning, when the function runs, this will run first, thus submitting the initial value or the previous value of the state of name, which is Nishant. And then this runs and thus updates the value of name in the console because it is asynchronous. So this will run first and then this will run because it is asynchronous. This is why we see Nishant in the console because it is getting the value previously that we had. Click it again and it will be now Borat. So this was how to create states in React. We can have different type of states as well. For example, we can have a state of age, and to set it we need to have set age. So use state, let's say 27. Let me recap states for you in React. So states are simply variables but with a difference. State holds some value like some name or age or an array or an object or a boolean value which can change over time, just like real life weather. When a state changes, like if name or age it changes, our component will re-render or update the DOM. So if the name changes or the name state changes, this will refresh itself to catch up to the new name from Nishant to something like Borat. So when it changes any one of them like name or age, our component will re-render, which means update itself. So states are private to the component itself or the function that it is created in. For example, this is a function, and from the closure concept you must know that the states cannot be used outside this function. It will simply throw an error. We can have as many states in a React component as we want. Now let's understand what is the useEffect hook in React. Let me take a real life example of what is a useEffect, but let me just tell you, this is a function that can be used to run side effects in a component of a React. It is a function, it can be used to run a side effect or side effects. Suppose that we have a state of weather. To set it, we can use set weather, as I told you in the previous section of this video. We have weather state, and what happens in real life when weather changes. So when weather changes, it can have effects on us. For example, if weather changes from summer to winter, we start to wear wintry clothes like sweaters or jackets. So similarly, when a state changes in React, this useEffect hook can be triggered. So that is why we use the useEffect hook. So how to create a useEffect hook? We have to import the useEffect hook from React, and this takes two things. Okay, let me write it here where we have a space, where we have more space. So use effect. This takes two things. First is the effect that we want to happen on the React component, and the second is the dependency array or dependencies, which means what must change that can trigger this useEffect. So for example, we had a state of weather. So when weather changes, this can be triggered. running the effect, and this effect can be a function as well. And let's say that we have function anything, and when this weather changes, we print something like weather changed. So let me explain it again what is happening. We are having this useEffect hook, and it is taking two arguments. One is the effect, which means what effect we want to happen when the useEffect hook runs, and second is the dependency. This is optional. This means what should change to run the effect. When a state of weather changes, this function will run and it will print weather changed in the console. I know this is bad handwriting, but fine, I think you can get it. So this is what a useEffect hook is. So this is mandatory, but this one is optional. We can skip this. So what will happen, or what is the difference between this scenario and when we skip it? So let me remove these two things and write one more useEffect hook in here as well. So it is running with an effect which can be a function, but we don't have any second argument like this dependency. So what will happen here is, let's say that we are having three states: name, age, is married. We are having three states in a React component. So when any one of them changes, this will run. When any one of them changes, name or age or is married, this useEffect hook will run, thus triggering the effect inside it. But if we follow the first one, like this one, and put the name here, not the age or is married, only when the name changes, this effect will run. Let me remove these things here and explain it to you properly, I mean clearly. Suppose that we have three states: name, age, and is married. They are supposed to change in their lifetime. This can change anytime, this can change, and this can change. So we can use the useEffect hook to trigger some effect when any one of these changes. So let's consider two scenarios or three scenarios. One is where we have the effect only, not dependencies, because dependencies are optional. When we have effect only. Second case is when we are having, let me write this here, useEffect, when we have the effect and second param also. Let's say we have the name here. Basically this is an array, dependency array we call it, and we can pass the state. So this one is the first case, this is the second case. We can also have a third case, which is use effect is having the effect and the dependency array is empty. The first case is when we have no dependency array. Second case is we are having a dependency array with a name, and third case is we are having a dependency array with empty value, I mean no value, 0. So what happens in the first case is, if any one of these state changes, name, age or is married, this will trigger, I mean the effect will trigger if any one of them changes. So let's say that this change this changed 2 times, this changed 3 times, and this changed 5 times. Our useEffect hook in the first case will run 2 plus 5 plus 3, which will be, let's say 10. This will run 10 times. In the second case, we are only having name in the dependency array. So this will run only when the name changes, not when these two changes. So we will have this as 2 times. In the third case, when the dependency array is empty, what will happen is this will only trigger on the first page load, first time or one time. So this will run if the dependency is empty when only the page loads. So I will also show you these things in the code, not to worry. So we are having three cases, 1, 2 and 3. This will run when any of the state changes, if name or age or married changes. This will be when only name changes. This will be only at the page load where the array is empty. Suppose we had two dependency array items here like name or age in the second one. So what will happen is, you can guess, when name or age changes, then this will run the effect, which means 2 plus 3 5 times if we have name and age in the dependency array. So this was the useEffect hook in React, how to create it and why to use it. Now let's see how to create a useEffect hook in React. First of all, we have to import this from React like this and invoke it because it is a function. So invoke it like this, and as I said on the whiteboard, this takes two arguments. The first is a function or the effect that will be triggered, and second is what will be triggered to run the function or the effect. So for example, let's say that we are having a function here called do something, and in here we can print the state of name. Let's pass the function do something in the useEffect hook as the first argument. Let me just write this thing. So we can just say name changed, or let's say not name changed, something changed. So in the first case from the whiteboard, the useEffect hook will trigger this function do something when any of the state changes like name or age, because we are not specifying which state to follow when it changes. Thus it will follow both states or all the states in our component. This was the first scenario. Now if I refresh the page, click change name, we will see something changed. Similarly, let's change the age here. So we make one more button here called change age, and let's change the age to, let's say, 5000. Function change age, set age to 5000 here. Now also print this in the UI. So now what will happen is, when the name or the age changes, this useEffect hook will trigger this function called do something, and it will change and it will console something changed. Let's try this out. Refresh once, click change name, we can see something changed. Click, okay, this will be change age, not name, sorry. Make this as change age. Try again. Change name, something changed. Change age, again we are saying something changed because we are not specifying which state to track. So it is tracking all the states in our component. So to give this some instruction on which state to follow, we use the dependency array. If I pass the name in here, it means this useEffect hook will trigger this do something function only when the name state will change, because we are passing name in here. So we can specify this as name changed. So refresh, click change name, we can see, just let me have name, not the value, then we will see name changed. Try again, click change name, name changed, but as I click change age, this will not be triggered because this is not tracking the age state, it is only tracking the name state here. If I put age in here, it will track both of them. The third scenario will be when I leave this as empty array. In this case, what will happen is, this will trigger only on the first page load, I mean this function. When the page loads, useEffect hook will trigger this do something function when it sees that this array is empty, and it will not trigger if I click change name or change age like this. This was the three cases we use useEffect hook in. Now there are some caveats or some rules that we must follow while we create the useState and useEffect hook in React, and they are: we cannot use states in if blocks. For example, if I make a if statement and say name is equals to, let's say, something abc, only then create the age state in here, because this will not work. What we are doing is we are limiting the scope of this age state in this block. So we cannot use the age outside this block. Measuring the property of closures. Do a for loop, let I equals to 0, I more than, let's say, age or 50, I plus plus. If I try to create the age state in a for loop, this will not work, because we will see age is not defined, and it is not defined outside this scope. It is only defined inside the scope, and we cannot access it outside this block. Also the property of closures. So let me bring this back. Let me show you one more thing that we should avoid while setting a state here. For example, we are having this function called change age, and it is setting the age to 5000. This is fine, but let's say that we have a case where we have to increment the age. So let me make a function called increment age. So increment age is here, and what this should do is set the state as increasing 1. Set the state plus 1. So I can say age plus 1 here. If I click this, this will work. But we have a problem with this. What will happen when you have multiple functions like this? So can you guess what will be the output in here when I run the function of increment age? You might be thinking we will get something like this, which can be age plus 1. In the first case, this will be 28, then 28 plus 1, 29, then 30, then 31, and 32. But you are wrong. This is not what will happen. We will only get 28 here, because we are having the age getting passed in all of them. So once the function increment age runs, this will increment 27 by 1, because age is updated, but the value is not reflected here, because this is a async function, similar with all the cases. So once we click increment age function while clicking the button here, change age, this will take the value of age as 27, and it will add 1 in all of the cases. So the final age will be 28. So click change age, you see it is 28. To fix this issue or to make it work, what we can do is pass an updater function here. So this function takes a param called previous. Let me write it here, and we can just increment previous plus 1. Similarly, we can do in all of these. Now if I click change age, what will happen is this will run, and it will put all of them in a queue, and once this finishes, only then this will run, then this will run, then this, and then this. So click change age, we will see 32, the final age here. Here what is happening is this will only run when it gets the new state, not the previous state. So it will update 28 plus 1 as 29, then this will update, then this, and then this. Okay, this was how to increment or how to get the previous value from a state like this and increment it if you want. Now one more thing is, if I try to redeclare age directly like this, it will not work. So if I try to give this as 50, let's see what happens. If I click change age, we will see this thing, assignment to a constant variable, because we have const here, const age. We cannot reassign a value to a const variable, so it will not work. Let me now show you what we should avoid while using the useEffect hook. We are having a function called setTimeout, which is a timer function. It is calling this function call to something after 1 second when the page mounts because the dependency here is empty. So what will happen here is when we load or when we mount the page, this will run and it will create its instance in the memory. And once the component unmounts or we change pages, this will still be in memory, its instance, I mean. So if I keep coming to this page, the instance will be keep getting created and it can cause memory leaks and performance issues. So what we need to do is clear the timeout when we unmount the page. That will ensure we have no memory leaks or no performance issues. How to do that? Just create a variable called say timeout, and once this runs, it will store its instance in the variable of timeout. And once our component unmounts or we change pages, we just need to do a cleanup function. And to do a cleanup, we want to clear the timeout as a pass the timer or timeout instance. So what will happen is when our setTimeout is running, it will store its instance in this timeout, and once our page is getting unmounted, the useEffect hook will do a cleanup using return and it will clear the timeout from the memory. So this is what we should do in order to avoid memory leaks and performance issues. So this was pretty much React states and React useEffect hook.